It's an organization that provides financial transformation solutions using digital transformation technologies whether it is in the area of procure to pay or source to contract or travel and expense management. One of the things I hear very often in my meeting with CFOs and financial controllers is their concern about wastages and leakages or frauds is always an area of concern for them. One of the questions we get very often is, how do we address this entire area? Which is why I thought it is something which requires us to go ahead and discuss and share some of our experiences about how this entire thing is done. And this concern is very legitimate in the sense that multiple surveys by the Big Four have repeatedly shown that this is an area which is very prone to both wastages and especially to frauds, and hence the need to go ahead and find ways of addressing this through technology, which is what I'll talk a little bit about, of how you can use technology, especially digital transformation and AI, to go ahead and make that happen. People have concerns in both areas, employee expenses as well as in the areas of vendor spend. Let me start by talking first about the employee reimbursement and employee expense related area, which also includes travel. The most common thing that I hear from finance teams in terms of their concerns is in three broad areas. Two which are related to frauds, which is padding of expenses and double charging of expenses, and one which is an area of wastage, which is typically that how do you ensure that wherever you are eligible for GST claims on travel and expense management, you go ahead and make sure you get the most of it. And these are definitely areas which the right kind of technology solution, if you're looking at it, it will go ahead and address these areas. Let's come to vendor spend management, which is a slightly bigger area because the quantum of spend on that also tends to be very high. And again, if you really want to address this area, there are a whole lot of different things which CFOs talk about. One is the fact that now we are having IRN invoices coming in. How do we know that a vendor who was supposed to give IRN invoices is giving us, or that the IRN invoice and the QR code it contains is actually related to the invoice that has come into them, so that there are no possibilities of any kind of vendor frauds which happen in the entire thing. They are worried about aspects related to either overbilling in terms of quantity or rate, and what kind of controls can be brought in so that people do not need to go ahead and check. Of course, the most common one that they talk about is duplicate invoices. And when I say duplicate invoices, right from the more blatant one where a vendor sends you an invoice and then sends another one with the same invoice number, date, amount, etc., to the slightly more sophisticated one where he may change some of these things and go ahead and do it so that if your processes are not proper, it would escape the scrutiny inside your own organization. And how is it that those can go ahead and get addressed? People have had leakages in the area of, I've paid in advance to a vendor against a purchase order. When the invoice comes in, how do I make sure that I do not pay the advance amount also and that gets deducted as part of the thing? How do I check on a separate note with the complex indirect taxation regime that we have in India? How do I make sure that the right GST rates have been charged by the vendor? Can I link it back to the HSN and the SSE codes and make sure? And then based on from two locations, can I really get an idea of their breakup into SGST, CGST, IGST? Plus, how do I go ahead and take care of things like composite vendors, unregistered vendors, so that that whole thing becomes easier for them? Another aspect which people want to really look at is similarly TDS. If I'm eligible, if I should be deducting a higher rate of TDS on a vendor due to the new laws and rules which are there, am I making sure, am I deducting the right rate? Also, the other aspect, a vendor is given a lower TDS certificate. How do I make sure that automatically the TDS rate deducted so that I don't need to go through another transaction? Because the cost of processing some of these things is so high. And from a point of view of, if you've made a mistake on GST or TDS, the consequences for you are again very high. So they want to go ahead and make sure that that is handled. Aspects which are related to, I've got an invoice for processing. How do I find out easily if the vendor has already paid the GST? Can the system help me go online to the GST portal and check out if it has been paid, so that if I decide that I want to, I can retain the GST amount till such time I'm sure that the vendor has gone ahead and paid it. There is also a big area which Especially in the last 1 year, I've been hearing a lot from vendors, which is related to MSME vendors and how do I track payments related to MSME vendor? How do I make sure if a vendor says he's an MSME vendor, I can actually go online and check that he's an MSME vendor and then handle their payments in a way so that I do not need to pay interest on this thing when my treasury situation is such that I'm able to take care of it. While there are multiple such things, but the last one I'm going to talk about is if there is a blacklisted or a blocked vendor, how do I make sure that an invoice never gets processed related to it? So these are areas of both leakages and wastages that can occur in an organization when it comes to vendor payment. You can see that they are multiple and need to be addressed. And yes, if you have the right kind of technology and solution for addressing these areas, whether it's in the procurement area or the sourcing area or the accounts payable automation area, these would be things which would go ahead and get handled. Besides actually helping you track this, what are some of the things which is actually detecting this and stopping it from happening? What are some best practices which you would do which would help you eliminate both wastages and leakages? I want to talk about one is, does the application help you measure the right metrics which would help you know how you are doing in some of these areas? It could be something as simple as what is your turnaround time for certain things to aspects which are related to which vendor, how much business are you doing? Is there a particular distribution across all your vendors for any spend category? Those kind of things, when you have metrics which are related to that, they help you ward off issues before they go ahead and happen. Forensic tracing is what people ask for often, which is that if I was not able to detect at that time, but later on I detect, how can the software help me, give me the trails which would be available for me to be able to go ahead and check back and know. And the message going out to organizations that the organization and the systems it has now has a memory. And therefore, even if you've done something in the past, you'd be go ahead and get. Thanks to Caro, one of the things that we are finding is auditors are getting into more details, and including internal auditors. So how do you make audit facilitation really easy for organizations to do it? A lot of controls which are right now taken care of by senior people in finance. How do you embed these controls in the system so that instead of being dependent on a person who then spends time and energy in going ahead and doing that, you know that the process is taken care of, giving you that kind of a peace of mind. And the last but not the least, which is becoming very important and organizations are now beginning to realize even more so, is providing detailed visibility to the organization on all aspects of spend. So the whole spend analytics thing and being able to know who is doing what, how much is being spent, what are the trends on spend, is a certain kind of spend suddenly going up. These are great ways of eliminating wastages and leakages, as well as finding out areas where there is opportunity to go ahead and reduce cost.